Okay.
Yeah, hit me up.
Well, as that unmistakable music indicates, we're going to talk not just the Atlanta Braves, but baseball in general, because the Hot Stove League is on. We've come back from I don't know, a lot of people thought it was uneventful winter meetings of about a week or a week and a half ago. Might do away with the shift in baseball. And everybody from Craig Counsell to certainly every traditionalist saying, no, don't ban the shift, this sort of thing. I don't know. I do think that effective bunting would end the shift very quickly. The problem is you don't hit a home run when you bunt. But, that's something that I just had not gotten a chance to talk about here on Tri-City Sports Now. I'm Marky, Billson, Josh Brown of Knockahoma Nation. Banning the shift, yay or nay? What are your thoughts?
Definitely nay. First of all, I'm honored to be here with you again, Marky, my friend. But the shift, I am anti-regulating most anything in regards to baseball and rule changes and all that. It's absolutely silly. What Manfred's trying to do, I think, is infuse more offense into the game, by banning, the shift. I don't think that's going to help it or not, just in my opinion. So, no, I think it's a terrible idea. I think it's absolutely just stupid, and I think that Rob Manfred there's so many jokes. There's so many reasons we can joke about the guy, but he actually think that. I don't understand.
Yeah, I know it's just, it's one thing to say, okay, everybody except the catcher has to line up in fair territory, or, that's a legitimate rule. But the idea that you can't play the hitter, I wonder, are we going to then say this far or something? The Braves used to be ahead of the curve, actually, in defensive positioning. I think I told you this. I used to go to a lot of games at PNC Park, and the press box there, you could see, the whole field. It was right there. But I noticed that the Braves, more than any other team, and I was going to all the games at the time, would shade the center fielder to play the hitter the other way instead of to pull. It's not a little bit more, but I was like, well, this is sort of why the Braves are and Bobby Cox later told me, very brief, well, basically it's the way we pitch. We're not one of these teams that decide that we have to always throw inside. You hear that a lot, You got to throw inside. We'll hit the corner, Hey, we'll do that. It's no players here, Josh Brown. A lot of people think that the Phillies, who probably in the offseason, a lot of people would have said, that's where Bryce Harper is going to go. Well, if they're paying Kutch $50 million, maybe not. But on the other hand, the reason the Pirates got rid of Kutch a year ago, or for that matter, the Giants, was they said, this is a guy whose production is declining.
Non-Brave. As a homer, and as a Braves fan, as we know, he is probably my favorite. Now, I love Andrew McCutchen. I think he's fantastic. I think he's such a good guy off the field, too. And I think when you're talking about growing the game, marketing to kids, however, I think he's not worth that money. I thought I kind of was interested in the Braves maybe going after him. I thought that would have been cool. Had the Braves done it, I would have. I love Andrew McCutchen. I don't think it's 2015 Andrew McCutchen. And if you look at the last year, and I know it's just 1 year, and I will grant you that I think Andrew McCutchen is better than he was last year. But if you look at last year and you compare numbers, F4, Andrew McCutchen 2.6, Nick Markakis 37. If you look at 2 outs with runners in score position, Andrew McCutchen 38 OPS plus, Nick Markakis 146 OPS plus. Nick Markakis, there's a lot of Braves fans who kind of wanted Andrew McCutchen, and they want a guy like him, and they don't like for the money.
I understand that. stats on broadcasting, when you start reciting stats, they go in one ear and out the other, but I think the point is made. Statistically, recently, Kutch and Markakis have been similar hitters. So why not, the devil that you know, so to speak, that sort of thing. I wanted to ask you, Anibal Sanchez, going to the Nationals. Here was a guy who 24 starts, 2.83 ERA. He's with the Nats.
I will say that the Nationals and the Phillies over this last week, Marky, through the winter meetings, have made the division tougher for sure. I don't think Anibal Sanchez is a factor, and I'm going to sound like a homer again probably, but if you look at Anibal Sanchez, listen, there's no doubt he was fantastic last year, and he was such an important part of the Atlanta Braves 2018 campaign, and a huge diamond in the rough. You know what I mean? But if you look at his career, you're talking about a 35-year-old guy who was 6. So he's a guy who, I've been watching baseball long enough, and and I could be wrong. He just had a really good year, and his 12 years prior, tell more of the story of who he is, I think, than just last year. And I could be wrong. He might have figured something out at age 34, and he might be the same pitcher in 2019. I just don't think it's going to happen. Intriguing.
Well, there has been a lot of discussion. I know Real Mundo is not on the market to go to the Mets anymore, on that quad A role, kind of like the Pirates or the Reds, plan for the future and all. But the Mets signed Wilson Ramos to be their catcher and not JT Realmundo. So let me ask, first of all, do you think that the Mets are back? I know their new general manager is saying, hey, we should be the favorite in the East this year. What are your thoughts on what the Mets have done in this offseason, Josh Brown of Knockahoma Nation?
I don't know if they're back. I will say that they got the injury bug last year, and it was almost this really weird freak thing. So I think that if you take that away and you look at the 2019 Mets and you assume that they're going to be mostly healthy, then yeah, they're a real threat. They really are, especially pitching wise. I don't know about Robinson Cano. He's kind of an ageless wonder. I could see him actually still being very good regardless of his age.
Mm-hmm.
The new catcher they got is phenomenal. I think JT Realmuto is maybe a little overrated. I think he's being shopped as if he's like Yogi Berra 2.0. And, the deal is, there's not a lot of great catchers right now. It's a weird mini era we're seeing in baseball where there's 3 or 4, if that, really good offensive catchers. And if you're a catcher these days and you hit 220, and you hit 15 dingers, then you'll get paid, And so I like Real Muto, but I think that I think he's just a little overrated. If you look at his splits, he's really a platoon guy. Honestly, he can't hit lefties at all. But back to the Mets, I think the Mets are going to be better. They can't do worse than they were. I think, So yeah, the Braves do need to maybe straighten some stuff here and there because the division did get better. I don't think the Mets are back per se, but I think they're going to be better.
Let's talk about the hometown signings here with the Braves. Brian McCann, 1 year, $2 million. Didn't do much with the Yankees, but, it's always nice sort of, bringing back a local product to Atlanta. You've got that, okay, sell a couple more tickets, I guess. Josh Donaldson, 1 year, $23 million. And this is a former MVP candidate, but he was injury plagued last year. The Indians seem to be wanting to just totally go into a different direction than what they had before. It's like they're trying to blow up their team and see, if the division's so weak they can't repeat with all new faces next year. But let's talk about the Braves. Do you like the signing of Donaldson, or did you say that's a lot of money to spend on possibly injured goods who, let's face it, didn't really do anything with the Indians? It's not like they went to the next round of the playoffs or even won a single playoff game with Donaldson around. What was your thought of that signing?
I liked it. I do think it's a lot of money. In fact, it's the largest single-season free agent contract in Major League Baseball history, actually. It's
Wow.
the largest one-year free agent deal ever in all of baseball, like ever. And it's the largest AAV, annual value for the Braves player ever. So it's a lot of money. There's no shying away from that. That's a lot of money. But I will tell you, I think that Josh Donaldson has a better chance in 2019 to hit 30 bombs and hit like 280 than him come out and hit like 240 and just not play well. I think they did their due diligence on him. I think he's still really good. And with the Indians, and it was only 16 games, he goes to the Indians, he hits 280, he throws up a 400 on base, and a 920 OPS.
Now that's good,
savage.
yeah.
For only 16 games, he was a complete savage. So I think it's good. I do, and you know me, I love Johan Camargo. So the question is, what happens with Camargo? Well, Camargo's not going to start third base when you got Josh Donaldson. However, Camargo is the super utility guy the Braves have needed. If you watch the NLDS, it was men against boys. You were watching the Atlanta Braves with a bench of like Ryan Flaherty against the Los Angeles Dodgers with guys like, Yasiel Puig coming off the bench. So the Braves needed some Johan Camargos or Charlie Culbersons on their bench to compete with these bigger teams.
We're talking to Josh Brown, Knockahoma Nation. I'm Marky Billson at Tri-City Sports Now. Okay, you like Donaldson, and I got to tell you, thanks for the information. That 920 OPS, okay, 16 games with the Indians, but yeah, that does alleviate my fears from somebody who, they didn't even want to play. They didn't need Donaldson, that sort of thing. What about McCann? What do you, what do you do for the Braves in 2019? Can he rebound in your opinion, or was this, I don't know, like Brandon Phillips coming back or something? What's your thought here?
Yeah, nobody wants to be the guy that says, Brian McCann's not good anymore, because it's such a, the Braves marketing department are milking this. And,
yeah.
They're doing these little Frenchie and McCann videos of them sitting next to the fireplace talking about the good old days. They are milking Brian. But, McCann, it's a tiny deal, right? So it's not it's not a big risk at all. And you're talking about a really young pitching staff, right? And so there might not be a better guy to work with young pitchers than Brian McCann. That's where his value is. He's also really good defensively, which I don't, and I probably should, but I don't really care as much as I probably should about defense when it comes to catchers. I think it's a little bit. I don't want to Mike Piazza back there, but I also don't. I don't really care as much about Tyler Flowers' pitch framing advanced metrics as most guys on Twitter. I just don't care. So, B-Knight is better than Suzuki defensively, but he's not going to hit. I don't think.
I gotta just say, as a perspective of follower not only the Braves but other teams as well, and certainly from Pittsburgh and all this, I would say one of the things that they said when the Pirates with Andrew McCutchen we talked about before started to made a big deal about was the difference in pitch framing between Ryan Domet and Russell Martin behind home plate for the Pirates, and it was like night and day. And the pitching staff improved overnight. And so I hate to talk about, little league stories and all, but even trying to catch as a little kid and all this. Yeah, the idea of, hey, bring the curveball back into the strike zone or something, that was a big skill. And, that you don't overlook that. It's one of the positive changes of new baseball, I think, is that they look at pitch framing, Josh Brown. So I want to talk about that. A couple of things didn't necessarily relate to the Braves. But what do you think of Daniel Murphy going from the Cubs to the Rockies? A lot of people were talking about, well, does he really have the power anymore? Ought to increase in 81 games in Colorado, obviously. But any thoughts there? 2 years, $24 million going to the Rocks.
Yeah, I loved it for the Rockies. I'm a big Daniel Murphy fan. I think with the Cubbies last year, he basically hit 300. With a good 800 OPS. He hits for average. He's good defensively. I think they're talking about maybe playing him at first base as well as second base. So yeah, I think it made the Rockies better for sure. Big Daniel Murphy fan.
What about the Cardinals getting Andrew Miller? I got to say, Josh Donaldson, Andrew Miller, Indians getting rid of these guys. They were hurt last year. Maybe they know something here. Maybe it's not just cost cutting. They haven't pulled that big name pitcher to break up their starting rotation yet. That big name trade, to break up their starting rotation yet. But what? Anyway. Would you have gone after Andrew Miller after his lackluster year last year, or would you have said, wait, this is Andrew Miller. If we can bring him on, we ought to do that. You don't get lefty pitching like this all the time. What's your thoughts here?
I don't know. I was a little torn on it, Marky, because I understand it's Andrew Miller, right? I mean, he's been fantastic, but he is going to be 34 years old. He's coming off a year where he had a 4.24 ERA. An atrocious whip. I mean, 1.382 whip. I mean, he was terrible, So, I mean, they probably know a lot more than me. They've probably done their due diligence on the guy, which is why they're going to pay him a lot of money. So, he's probably in the middle of, he's probably not as bad as last year, right? And he's probably better than I think he is. But I wouldn't have done it. Just my personal opinion.
I'm reminded last year of the Reds-Indians game where the Indians had a 7-0 lead going into the ninth and they lost it because their bullpen was that bad.
Wow.
The Indians actually led the majors in complete games with a whopping 5. But no, I mean, that was how they, I mean, Francona, he knew the bullpen he had, and he was trying to get everything he could out of his starting rotation and such. Speaking of Braves, Charlie Morton, former Braves and all that, he was added to the Rays starting rotation. I like that pickup. I know that Morton is getting closer to 35, but so what? 2 years, $30 million, was an effective starter for the Astros. Rays need to have something there for him to compete with the Yankees and the Red Sox. They very quietly won 90 games last year. Do you think Morton might put him in the playoff hunt at all?
Yeah, I think so. Not a lot of guys we watch throughout baseball kind of are like him, right? I mean, not a lot of guys wait until they're about 32-ish to figure it out, right? And he's one of those guys. Like his 27 year was not this weird outlier because in 2018 he came back and was even better.
Mm-hmm.
He's fantastic, and what a when you look back at it, the Braves traded him and Gorky Hernandez and Jeff Lott to the Pirates for Nate McLeod, and at which point Nate McLeod forgot how to play baseball like immediately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I'm a big Charlie Morton fan. He's what he did in Houston was really cool.
The one thing I can remember when he was really struggling with the Pirates, I mean, his ERA was over 10, and he was doing interviews and fessing up and all that, and he still talked to the media, and that impressed me. And I thought then that Morton was going to turn around and was actually lighthearted. Now, admittedly, he was doing things like, after a while and addressing his shortcomings, the interview would go to how he liked to play musical instruments or something. But that's what you do, and it wasn't as if he shied away from, why is your ERA 10 there, Charlie? Speaking of guys who I can bet their ERA won't be 10 or it will be declining, Patrick Corbin, boy, the Nats really ought to have a wonderful staff. I don't know if they need Bryce Harper. Pat Corbin coming from the Diamondbacks to the Nats. I know that you were skeptical about the signing, taking from, the Braves Sanchez to the Nats. But what about this? It looks like they are going to go 5 deep in their staff and all. Do you think that this Corbin makes the Nats the team to beat, or is it still the Braves because of their youth and you like Donaldson? You like the moves they made? What do you think?
Now, Corbin's the real deal. Yeah, he's a different animal than Anibal Sanchez. I think Anibal, like I said, he did great last year. I don't think he's going to be that guy again, but Corbin's a different animal. I mean, we're talking about a 28-year-old guy who just had a 3.15 ERA, and a ridiculously low, like, what was his whip? 1.05, like, ridiculous. Like,
yeah, that's what it was, as a matter of fact. Basically, he was a base runner an inning. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, he was savage. 200 innings guy. You don't see that a lot in baseball. 246 strikeouts. Are you kidding me? I mean, yeah, he's
the real deal. Josh, we've been here. I gotta speed it up here, in fact, because I'm way overdue. I got Eli Drinkwitz of Appalachian State coming up next. But there you go. The Nats staff's going to improve. It's going to give the Braves a lot of headaches next year, but the Braves are still young, and Donaldson was a good pickup. We'll be back. Eli Drinkwitz after this.
Thank you, my friend. Have fun.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, and so